Yes, we are back here on WLTH 1370M. That is 92.7 in the FM dial. If you're nasty. It's a damn shame. Sorry you guys, just missing the Miss Jackson here. Woo. It is it is Friday, March the 6th, 2026. It is 7:36 in the PM here. So that means I got about 24 minutes before Dr. Williams comes in and kicks me out personally with a 2x4 like Hacksaw Jim Duggan. And Lord knows we don't want that. You might be forgiven for being so wrapped up in the beginning of World War III that you may have forgotten the 35th anniversary of one of the most important events in American history, modern American history at least. Before Black Lives Matter echoed through the streets of America, meant to galvanize and inspire those in power to see the humanity in black people who were being brutalized by racist violence, there was another phrase that was equally celebrated, mocked, and ridiculed that was ringing through the ears of people in 1990s America. Can we all get along? Can we get along? Those were the words of Rodney King, the patron saint of black victims of police brutality, whose beating was a widely publicized case of police brutality that occurred 35 years ago this week on March 3rd, 1991 in Los Angeles, California. It became one of the most consequential incidents in modern U.S. policing history because unlike the constant, barrage of beatings that black men had been getting for many years, Rodney King's pain and suffering was caught on video. Yeah, they caught him on video this time, showing all of us that just because we were in a new electronic age, that didn't mean that the old world's racism wasn't still one of the most dominant forces in our society.
Now the story that might never have surfaced if someone hadn't picked up his home video camera. We've all seen the pictures of Los Angeles police officers beating a man they had just pulled over. The city's police chief said today he will support criminal charges against some of the men. Here's ABC's Gary Shepard.
The three police officers facing felony criminal charges were among a group of 15 who stopped a 25-year-old black man last Saturday night, then beat him, kicked him, and clubbed him, unaware that an amateur photographer was recording the incident on videotape. Los Angeles Police Chief Daryl Gates looked at the tape and said he thinks assault with a deadly weapon will be one of the charges.
In our review, we find that the officers struck him with batons between 53 and 56 times. One officer rendered 6 kicks and one officer 1 kick.
Civil rights organizations say the Los Angeles Police Department has a history of brutality and misconduct that goes back a quarter of a century, including one incident that sparked the Watts riots. So far this year, there have been more than 125 complaints of police misconduct filed with watchdog organizations.
We no longer want to have to wake up each morning not knowing what fear to expect next. Today, we are not sure that the police is there to protect us.
But Chief Gates today called the LAPD a model department and said he has no plans to resign. Gary Shepard, ABC News, Los Angeles.
Wow, that was the original news clip of the Rodney King beating from 1991. And, it's incredible just how much things have changed, but also how much things have stayed the same. I mean, you just have it all right here. Rodney King, a 25-year-old black man who was driving on the Foothill Freeway when officers from the Los Angeles Police Department attempted to pull him over for speeding. He didn't stop immediately. He later said he feared getting another DUI charge because he had been drinking. A high-speed chase followed, reaching speeds of about 100 to 115 miles per hour before King exited the freeway near the Lakeview Terrace. After King stopped, eventually he had to stop, several officers surrounded him, including Stacy Kuhn, Lawrence Powell, Timothy Wynn, and Theodore Briseno. The officers would order King to lie on the ground. When he did not comply to their liking, immediately police used tasers twice, which caused him to fall. What followed was one of the most brutal assaults ever committed to tape. Officers struck King more than 50 times with metal batons. He was kicked repeatedly while on the ground. And this only took about a minute or 2 minutes. But good God, the beating that he took in that 2 minutes or so was historic. It was epic. And unfortunately, it was pretty normal if you were black in America in the early 1990s. Probably today too, in a lot of ways. From the beating, Rodney King would suffer 11 skull fractures. 11 skull fractures. Think about that, 11 skull fractures. He would suffer facial fractures, permanent brain damage. He would suffer broken bones and internal injuries. Now, the thing that always made the Rodney King beating significant was that it was caught on tape. The incident might have remained obscure if not for a nearby resident named George Holliday. George Holliday, just think about how unlikely all of this was, right? George Holliday was a videographer who had just gotten some new video equipment and just so happened to be testing out his video equipment, pointing it outside of the window at the apartment complex that he lived, which was perfectly positioned to catch those officers brutalizing Rodney King on the Foothill Freeway that way. That's what made the Rodney King beating notable. Back then, everybody didn't have a cell phone. And certainly not cell phone cameras that you could just easily point at anybody who's doing something. He gave the tape to KTLA, the local news outlet in California. The footage aired on TV and was soon broadcast all over the world. It became one of the first viral videos of police brutality and shocked viewers due to its graphic nature. But many people have been telling people about this before that. Many people had been very outspoken about police brutality for years. It was in songs. NWA, Ice-T. All of the rappers from LA talked about it. Tupac, all of them talked about police brutality. Back when hip hop was still very much a political outlet for young people who and the frustrations in their lives, dealing with police was a big part of that. Richard Pryor joked about it in his stand-up specials. Oh, those beatings, those people were just resisting arrest. Yes, lots of people talked about the police brutality, and America never believed it until they saw it up front, up close. And this is why I tell people all the time, look, the police we're dealing with today in 2026, 2025, they are probably the best police we've ever dealt with. I know that might be shocking to hear. But the police in this country today have probably never been more well-behaved, ever. Because everybody's got a cell phone. Everybody's got a cell phone camera. Like we just saw Derek Chauvin, who killed George Floyd, get 20-something years in prison and get stabbed 20 times in prison last year. We saw Jason Van Dyke, who killed Laquan McDonald in Chicago, gets sent to prison. We saw the police officer who shot, what was his name? I don't want from South Carolina. I forget what his name is. His name escapes me. But he was running away. He was running away. And the police officer said that he was fighting with him. And then the hidden camera came out, found out you could see the police officer literally just filling his back with bullets. And he ended up going to prison. This has been the first time in ever in history that we've actually started seeing police officers get some consequences. We just saw Sean Grayson get convicted of killing, not Sandra Bland, the woman in Illinois, Sonia Massey. Sonia Massey. The thing that made the Rodney King beating extraordinary wasn't that it was the first time it happened. It was that it was the first time it was captured like that. Brothers were getting those beatings all over America for decades, hell, for centuries, since the police were slave catchers. Those were the beatings that we were expected to take. You can even see some of those beatings that Martin Luther King would take on the Edmund Pettus Bridge when they would sick dogs on them and sick water hoses on these people. That's what America was. That's what America still is in a lot of ways. What's important about the Rodney King case is that it informed a lot of people who had been asleep for many decades about the conditions that black people were living under in America, especially when it came to policing. It woke a lot of them up. And without Rodney King, you don't get the type of outrage about Amadou Diallo, Abner Louima, Sean Bell, eventually Trayvon Martin, and Michael Brown. The Rodney King beating really is the moment that you started to see the seeds sowed for the Black Lives Matter movement, which would happen 20 years later. And so it's important to understand now that Brother Rodney has died. He died some years ago after drowning at his house. It's important to understand that he became a historic figure, just like George Floyd's a historic figure, Trayvon Martin's a historic figure. He became a historic figure would forever change the consciousness of the American people. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the trial of the officers that would beat Rodney King, that sort of kangaroo court or whatever you want to call it, that sham trial, I guess I should call it. You had 4 officers who were charged with excessive force. They purposely moved the trial from where the violations happened in Los Angeles to Simi Valley, a white privileged suburbs that had a lot of police officers in it. And in April of 1992, the jury acquitted 3 of the officers and deadlocked on 1. That would spark the LA riots, which I'm sure we'll probably cover next year for the 35th anniversary of the LA riots. 6 days of violence. 63 people died in the riots. Over 2,000 people were injured. 12,000 people were arrested. $1 billion in property damage. The National Guard and the federal forces were deployed. After that, a lot of people don't remember there was a federal civil rights trial after that, in which the federal government charged the officers with civil rights violations. Stacey Kuhn and Lawrence Powell were both convicted and during the civil rights trial and served 30 months in prison. The other 2 officers were acquitted. And so, look, man, it's important to understand just how important this trial was, the Rodney King trial, how important Rodney King is as a historic figure. Even things like the OJ trial. The OJ trial, would not have been what it was without the Rodney King beating. Because before Rodney King, again, a lot of people were asleep about police misconduct. Because the OJ trial, because the Rodney King trial happened, and we saw those police officers get away with brutalizing Rodney King, and we saw what the police were capable of getting away with in some instances, that made OJ's defense that the LAPD is racist and evil and capable of setting people up and doing those things very feasible to people. And I've covered the OJ trial for the 30th anniversary of the OJ trial 2 years ago. You might want to watch the playlist on my YouTube page, Scott Cannon Radio. And you'll see, even in that case, the LAPD, they did a lot. They did a lot to hurt themselves in their own case in that situation. OJ might not be a free man today and might have been railroaded by the justice system if it was not for the Rodney King case and that verdict. And so that's very important to say. It also it triggered major scrutiny of the LAPD. It led to the Christopher Commission, which investigated LAPD practices and became a foundational moment about police brutality, racial profiling, and accountability here in these United States. It's important to understand, man, the LAPD, especially in that era, they were notorious for their criminality. Biggie Smalls, the rapper, was alleged to have been murdered by LA police officers. They had a scandal called the Rampart Division scandal, which inspired Training Day with Denzel Washington, where you had people in the LAPD robbing banks and setting up black men and Hispanic men for crimes that they didn't commit. The OJ trial, the Rodney King trial put a huge spotlight on all of that. And that's important to say. So rest in peace to the brother Rodney King. And we have to learn from cases like this about why it's important to keep fighting for justice here in America. As black people, not just as black people, but people of good conscience. If you got a good conscience, it shouldn't matter whether Rodney King is black or white or Hispanic or Asian or whatever. Should nobody get beat by the police like that. And thank God we have the technology today to possibly hold a lot of more of these, criminal cops accountable. That's not all cops. I'm not going to go out, or even I don't believe that's most cops. I'm just going to say the ones who are doing wrong, we should be catching them on camera. And now we all have the ability to be George Holiday.